Hello everyone, today I'm gonna give you my point of view about Sense and Sensibility. This was the second book that I read about Jane Austen. The first one was Pride and Prejudice. I really like this book. And as we know, Sense and Sensibility was written in the year of 1790. It belongs to the genre novel of manners, and the setting of the novel was in 18th century in England and some various countries in London. This novel was inspired by Jane Austen's own relationship with her much beloved sister Cassandra. In the novel, we can see Cassandra in the wiser and older Eleanor, while Jane is more like the emotional Mariam. I really like this novel because it has many interesting issues that are not only applicable for those years but also for this time. And I consider that this novel has many interesting topics to talk about. For example, discrimination toward women. Women didn't have the right to inherit their father's money and property because only men had the right to inherit money and property. A good example of this was the case of Dashwood girl. When her father passed away, they didn't inherit anything because they were girls. I consider that this is not good because women was not treated in the same level that men. Society was a interesting role because people had to behave according to what society said. For example, rich people were not allowed to get involved with poor people, and vice versa. A good example of this was the case of Eleanor and Edward. When Fanny realized that Edward was in love with Eleanor, she didn't allow them to stay together because Eleanor was poor and Edward was rich. Love as a suffering, as an emotion of suffering. Love was the responsible for people suffering because people used to love and to put their feelings in the wrong people. For example, Marianne put her love and feelings in Willoughby, but Willoughby betrayed her because he decided to get married with Miss Grey because Miss Grey had a lot of money and Marianne was poor, and that made Marianne to suffer in love and to stay very unhappy. The loss of home. In this novel, people had to deal with the loss of their home, and this can be seen in the Dashwood girl. When Mr. Dashwood passed away, they had to move from one place to another in order to have shelter. Love as a competition issue for women. Since women were not allowed to inherit money and property, they had to look for a wealthy man in order to succeed in life. And I consider that this is not fair because women choose a man for convenience but not for love. Money as a powerful factor. Jane Austen wanted to portray that money was a powerful factor that was attached to each decision that people make because money moves people to take every decision, and I consider that this is not good because people had to take decision guided by love but not for interest. Marriage. In this novel, Jane Austen wanted to portray that women got married because they need a high level or because they need love, and this is not good because women had to get married because they love the other person and not for interest. But that was not the case of Marianne and Eleanor because Marianne and Eleanor wanted to get married because of love and not for convenience, in spite of that they were poor. As a conclusion, I would like to say that I really love this novel, but I don't like the fact that Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility are very similar, but they are very different at the same time because Pride and Prejudice is about the pride and the prejudice that people make about other people without knowing them very well. And in Sensibility, Jane Austen wanted to portray that people, in order to take good decisions, need to have sense and sensibility together. Because Marianne take decisions with her sensibility, and Eleanor take decisions with her sense, and because of that, they suffer a lot. But at the end of the novel, they use the sense and the sensibility at the same time at the moment to take decisions, and that made they to have a better life. I really recommend to you this novel because it has many vocabulary that you can learn, and also for those who love romantic novel, this novel is very interesting and they are gonna enjoy this novel a lot.
Okay, good afternoon, teachers and students. In this opportunity, I'm going to talk to you and I'm going to give you my analysis of the book Sense and Sensibility. So, as an introduction, I would like to say that I did not like this book so much. Why? Because this book reminds me of Pride and Prejudice, and obviously it does because it was written by the same author, which is Jane Austen. I didn't like it because the topics that were discussed in the book were not so catchy for me. But at the same time, I have to say that those same topics are very relevant for society and they deserve to be discussed in this video. For this, I selected some topics that for me are the most relevant, that are the ones that I'm going to explain to you. For example, I took discrimination, money, the importance of family, about perception of love, society, lies, interest, and support of family. So I'm going to develop one by one in order for you to learn what I got from this book. So let's get started with the first one, which is support of family. So remember that at the beginning of the book, Mr. Dashwood died. So for that reason, the three Dashwood sisters and the mother felt very uncomfortable and they felt very sad. So I consider that family is important because since they were very close one to one another, they knew how to overcome that situation. Even though they didn't have money and a place to stay in, they had one another, which was very important because with that love, they felt very secure and they felt like everything was going to be okay. So, talking about that in real life, I consider that having a family that supports you is very important because in that way you're going to be good and like you're going to have good inspiration to keep going in your life. So that is why I consider that family is very important in the life of each person. Talking about the second point, which is the importance of family. This is very related to the first one because, as I said before, family is very important not only in the life of a person but also in society. So, if I have a family that supports me all the time, obviously I'm going to feel okay. In, in that way, I'm going to feel better, and I'm going to overcome the situations that life presents. And in the book, a good example of that was the case of the Dashwood girls because they were very close and they stayed together all the time. At the moment of taking decisions, they did it together as a family, not as a unit, but as a family. So for that reason, I consider that family played a very important role in the book, and at the same time, it does nowadays because family helps people to improve their lives and to stay together no matter what. As a third point, I'm going to talk about money. Remember that basically the novel is based about money and money all the time. So I can say that money is important, but it is not the most important thing in each person's life because with money you can buy things, you can buy food, you can buy education, but you can become greedy. And when a person becomes greedy, his or her life changes forever because this person becomes a bad person that only is going to think in money and money all the time, but not in another important thing, which is love and persons and family. So in the book, money was presented as a bad thing that changed people's personality. I consider that people have to be intelligent at the moment of managing money because in that way they're not going to lose their temper and they are not going to change for bad. So money is good, but at the same time it's bad. Then, as a fourth point, I have society. Why? Because remember that in the book, society was presented as a bad influence for people. Remember that society at that time dictated how people have to live, how to act, and how to say things. A good example of this was in the role that women played, because society told or dictated that women have to be in a certain way. They have to choose for a certain kind of persons, and they have to act and dress in a certain way. This showed clearly that society was a big influence in the life of each person. Nowadays, I can say that society is still a big influence on people, but unfortunately, I can say that that influence is a negative one. Why? Because nowadays people tend to act and to say things in a bad way. Because people think that society is the one that is going to rule their lives, but they are wrong. Because the one that rule their lives is oneself. So for that reason, I think that society is presented as a bad influence in the book, and at the same time, society plays an important factor still in society in the world, because society likes to dictate that or to rule each person's life. Now, as the next point, I have interest. Why interest? Because the people that were presented in the book were described as people that like money and just money. A good example of that is Fanny, which she was interested in money all the time. Remember that she was the wife of the Dashwood girls, stepbrother. So she didn't like them, the girls, because she thought that the money that her husband was going to invest in her stepsisters could be used for another purposes. So that showed that money and interest went together in Fanny's life. So I consider that money and interest are not okay in the life of people, because people have to behave in a correct way, and they have to remember that they have to share what they have. In that case, Fanny didn't like to share the money that they have with the Dashwood girls, and I consider that that is not a good action, because people have to be good with the ones that are in need. Talking about that same topic, but nowadays, I consider that there are a lot of people that do not like to share what they have, because they think that everything is meant just for them, but not for others. So it is an issue that is very common nowadays, and people have to realize that they have to share, and they do not have to be interested just in money, because they have to be interested in other people in order for help them. Then I have lies. Lies, because in the book, for example, Willoughby was presented as a good man, that Marianne fell in love of him. But at the beginning, we all thought that he was okay, he was a good man, and that he was the one for Marianne. But later on, we all realized that he was a liar. He, he pretended to love Marianne, but in fact, he wanted to have a good economical position in society. So he was a liar, and he just uh, made Marianne feel bad, because he was he was not in love with her. He just wanted her money, and he wanted to take a good advantage of her in society. Not talking about this in real life, I can say that there are a lot of people who are liars, and they just want to take advantage of us, but we have to be very intelligent and wise to realize that there are good people and bad people, and we have to distinguish them in order to avoid damages in our lives. Next, I have bad perception of love. Why? Because remember that Marianne was a very sensitive and sensible person, and she felt in love very quickly of Willoughby. Remember that Willoughby was a bad person, and he just wanted to take advantage of her. So it is important to mention that at the moment of falling in love with someone else, people have to be intelligent, and not just using the heart but the brain at the same time, So in that way, people are going to avoid damages, personal damages, for the rest of their lives. And nowadays, I have to say that there are a lot of people who are not wise at the moment of falling in love, because they have to remember that love is not a common or an easy topic to discuss. They have to be very intelligent at the moment of falling in love with someone else, because that is going to affect their lives for good or for bad. Next, I have discrimination. Basically, the whole book, it shows discrimination. Why? For it shows discrimination towards women. Remember that at that time, women did not were allowed to receive money from for other persons, specifically from their fathers. And I consider that that is not okay, because everybody in life have the right to receive something, no matter the situation. I consider that discrimination played an important factor in the book, but at the same time, I have to say that we still have discrimination in our work. Remember that there are some jobs that women cannot be part of, and I consider that both women and men have the same rights in society. So that is a problem that we people have to get rid of in order to have a better and balanced society. Then, as a last point, I have also my conclusion. Talking about in general lines about the books, as you remember at the beginning, I said that I didn't like it. But even though I didn't like it, I have to admit that the topics that the book presented are very interesting, because they were not topics from fantasy or from fairy tales. They are topics and situations that occurred in England at that time, and there are many of that situations that are still happening in our world. So for that reason, I consider that people have to be very intelligent and know that this book is very important to realize that some people are bad, are liars, and we have to be intelligent at the moment of choosing our relative, or choosing our friends, and the partner for the rest of our lives. So basically, that is my point of view about this book, and thank you very much.